11. Council. We're on. We're good.
Call the July 11, 2023 meeting of the DeKalb County Council to order, and we'll begin with an opening prayer by Councilman Kraft. Opening prayer.
Make sure your mics are on, please. I know.
Say Robert.
It'd probably sound bad.
All right, let's pray. Father God, we thank you for another day of life, another day to serve you, and we pray that you would help us today as we serve our fellow citizens here in council, and that we keep that in mind, that we're serving you and serving them in our job here. Help us to have make wise decisions and be prudent in our actions. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And Councilman Van Wy has let us know that he has a cattle issue this morning, and he'll be here as soon as he possibly can. You've all received a copy of the June 13th, 2023 minutes. I can have a motion to accept them as presented.
Moved.
Is there a second? Moved by Councilman Yard, second by Councilman Collins. Discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. All right. Additionals. We have two. The first one comes to us from the Airport Authority. This is one that was presented to us last month, and we returned to them for the proper forms, and that is Department, DeKalb County Airport Authority. The fund name is the Rainy Day Fund. Account 1490. The amount requested is $750,000. Was this line item under consideration year-to-date expenses? Was it included in the annual budget request? The answer is no. Funds were not available at that time. How will this appropriation be used? Self-serve funding system and local share of the runway extension project. Specific cost of the item, $750,000. How was the cost determined? Competitive bidding. Is this a recurring expense? The answer is no. And will other expenditures be necessary? The answer is no. Was this discussed with the council liaison? The answer is yes. The liaison's name is Rick Collins. And I have a motion to appropriate the $750,000 in the rainy day fund.
Moved.
And moved by Councilman Yard. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Collins. Discussion? Comment from the public?
Hi, I'm Mike's on. Larry Williams, 2418 Woodland Trail, Auburn. So my question has to do with the $750,000. Was it not budgeted? Did I hear that correctly?
It was not budgeted. It was in the rainy day fund.
Okay, what is the source of the funds? Where did the funds come from?
Susan, the source of the funds. It is their some of their tax income. It's also their revenue from the airport. And they've put money aside in their rainy day fund, just as the county council does.
Right, I understand what a rainy day fund is. The question is, how do we make a $750,000 budget miss? I guess that's the problem I struggle with. How come we didn't see that in the budget process?
Well, first of all, not everyone budgets every fund. DeKalb County is one of the few counties in the state that budgets every fund.
I've gone through
If there
every,
was
I've
no-
gone
if
through
there
every
was-
account, and I get that, okay?
If there was no anticipated spending at that time.
Right.
In fact, it says that money was not in the fund at the time, so they didn't budget it. And it was,
Okay. So we got a federal grant that, but,
this is, yeah.
uh-huh. Okay.
And
so
if they don't have that, if they don't know until after
Well, September.
August, because I have to advertise, if they don't know late August
Right.
of the prior year.
Correct.
It's not going to get in the budget. So it's not that they forgot, it's that they now were made aware that they were granted this money.
Okay.
They have to appropriate it through an additional appropriation process to satisfy the state.
Okay.
Because otherwise, they're going to be spending, even though that money's there, they're going to be
Right.
spending, and it's going to appear that they're spending and their accounts are going negative because they didn't appropriate it to put it there.
Okay. So my concern, the basis of my concern is that I have gone through every one of your accounts on Gateway for the 2023 budget. And I haven't looked at all the 2022 budget, but yeah, okay. So we end up with $750,000 additional that could have been reallocated to some other area or not. In
I
the prior
believe
year
that
budget.
when they, on here, it talks about the runway project. I believe when they applied for the grant, it was
Right.
specific for their runway project.
Okay,
So from my knowledge, they couldn't use it for something else because they asked for it. They requested it so they could do their runway.
okay.
And
Randy
Larry,
Fox is in the
When you
room. He
stated
may-
it that way, using it for something else, you
Right.
didn't mean other than the airport, did you?
Well, it's part of my question. I think you said it was
This
taxpayer,
is specific to the airport. It could not have been used anywhere else in the county,
but was it DeKalb County taxpayer money
to the airport.
to the airport?
It is strictly for the airport.
Okay, that was not budgeted.
I would have to call, I am 99% positive that it was they received a grant.
Gotcha.
Not totally different than us collecting taxes and sending it out to the units. They received a grant that they didn't know that they were getting when they budgeted last time.
Okay,
Now, I mean, they could put in $1 million in rainy day right now to budget for next year.
Correct.
They may or may not get it, but
Right.
that's not how they did it.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
waited until they knew they were getting their money, and now they have to put it there so they can spend it.
You know, this is very similar to what we have to do for the state grants, for the probation department, for community corrections, because of the split year. They do a fiscal year, not a calendar year. We always end up doing an additional appropriation for their budgeted money
Okay.
because it doesn't come in at the time of when we develop the calendar year budget.
okay,
And if you look back 10 years ago,
Right.
or even 5 years ago, you will see that we were doing an excessive number of additional appropriations. That was true throughout the state. And when Wes Bennett took over as the head of the DLGF,
Right.
he encouraged everyone to budget every fund so that you weren't doing an excessive number of additional appropriations.
I
And
would
that
agree
has
with
been
that.
accomplished.
yeah.
Compare what we've done so far this year, compare what we did in 2022 to what we did in 2012. Probably, more than likely, less than half.
Yeah.
Probably even less than a quarter.
It would certainly be a best practice to obviously budget as much as you can through outside of, or not in the general fund, but elsewhere, so you don't have to do all those appropriations. That helps me understand what's going on. You know, again, reading through your accounts, my takeaway is from high level is that there are opportunities to budget even more to the, I think, outside of the general fund into the individual accounts departments. So, okay, thank you.
I just want to add that when a grant is applied for, it's for a very specific person, a very specific area or project, and it has to be spent. I mean, you just can't hang it out there and earmark it. It's
Correct.
targeted, it has to be spent.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And like Rick said, we don't know exactly when they're going to come, but it is targeted for a very specific project, Larry. And if we don't spend it, there could be penalties down the road.
Sure, okay, thank
And I
you.
do know you understand the difference between accrual accounting and fund accounting.
Been doing
You
it
know,
40
we may
years.
have
yeah.
$1 million, but if it's not in the right pocket,
Right.
it can't be spent.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that, you know, this is one of those things. This is airport. This is not available for anywhere else in the county to be used,
Okay,
only for the airport.
okay, thank you.
All right, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion among the council on this additional appropriation? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. That motion is carried. All right. Next, we have an additional for County General from the Public Defender's Office. Department is Public Defender. It's from the General Fund. Account 33120. Account title is Transcripts. The amount requested is $6,000. Was this included in the annual budget request? The answer is yes. How will the appropriation be used to pay for transcripts for appeals? Is this a recurring expense? The answer is yes. Will other expenditures be necessary? The answer is yes. The reason for the other expenditures as appeals are filed is when the expenditures occur. Was this discussed with the department liaison? That was yes. That was Councilman Yard. And second part of this is also for the general fund from the Public Defender's Office. Count 32780, other services and fees in the amount of $10,000. Was this included in the annual budget request? The answer is yes. And how will this appropriation be used to pay appeal attorneys? How was the cost determined? We budgeted $11,500 for the year and have already spent $10,500. Is this a recurring expense? The answer is yes. Will other expenditures be necessary? The answer is yes. Reason for other expenditures is as appeals are filed. Was this discussed with the department liaison? The answer is yes, and that is Councilman Yard. So, can I have a motion to approve the Public Defender's request from County General in the amount of $16,000? That's $6,000 for the transcripts and $10,000 for the attorneys.
Moved.
Been moved by Councilman Yard. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Dembski. Discussion. Mark, would you like to give us a brief explanation here?
Brief explanation. Remember, this money used to come out of the court's budgets. And then I found out after we were in the program for 4 or 5 years that Superior Court had paid an appeal, didn't go through us, where we missed our 40%. So if you remember, I came here a few years ago and said, hey, all this money should be funneled through the Public Defender's Office. I just didn't know how much it was going to be. I started doing that right around the pandemic. You can see the number of trials that we're paying for appeals this last year. It just ratcheted up. We're at July. We have another trial this week. I got a trial next week. They're coming up. And so This is something that would have come out of the court's budget anyway. It's not like it's any additional cost. We generally go through phases. We don't have that many trials usually in this county. This is just a weird year. You've probably seen about it in the paper. I mean, the one guy that got 90 years, that appeal was appealed to the Supreme Court. That one cost $4,000 alone. The transcript on that Nicholas Robinson trial cost $4,000 for them just to type it up.
Okay, question, Mark. When you said going through your department, by going through your department, it's potentially we'll get 40% reimbursed from the state.
Well, we will.
Through the
Yeah.
but is that, I assume all these are felonies because misdemeanors are not.
Yes, misdemeanors are not reimbursable.
Okay, so, and we would not have gotten that reimbursement if it went through the courts.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I started doing it. It's just hard to budget. That's why I gave a couple of sheets here. There's the trials, we actually had to transfer $4,000 from another account to get up to $17,000, and then the last sheet is what we have left. Now, that big trial that just took place a couple weeks ago, I think that's not going to become due until the beginning of next year, so we should maybe skate on that one. That's why when I was talking to Dave, I'm thinking I could probably get by with less, maybe $7,500 this year, but you know, when we're done with our budget, it goes back into the general fund anyway. I just don't want to run out of money. That's all.
Well, I'd rather you do one additional and not have to come back
I know.
3 months from now and get another
Yeah.
one, so.
And that's why, like, you'll see on the requested for next year, I saw this coming, and I increased, you can see the 200% for the transcripts from $3,000, since the one case cost $4,000. I asked for $9,000 next year, and I asked for a little more on the appeal.
And the appeals are handled not by the staff attorneys in your office, correct?
That's correct. It's usually because of conflicts. If we can do it, we do. Like I did one for a guy who was a sovereign citizen. The county didn't get charged a couple years ago, Christopher. But anyway, if we can do it, we do it. But if we can't, typically it's a conflict, and so we have to farm it out. And that's also on the same appeal line, or the budget line of our investigator, which we have to have for the state rules, even though we don't have an investigator. So we just threw it all together in the same fund. So we're really using some investigator money, but that's all right.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mark? Yes.
So on the list that you gave us of the appeal.
Yes. Yes, yeah, that I just listed, like I said, we're in July. It's a weird year. We're having a lot of trials. So the two that are listed at the bottom there haven't, one trial is this week and the other one's next week. We're already past the final pretrial conference, so yes. But you remember, there's a timing situation there. If the person is convicted, sentencing happens later, and then after sentencing, the first 30 days when you file the notice to appeal. And then after that, they have to prepare the transcripts, which takes several months. So this might not take those, the money for those, if we can push it, might not be needed till next year. But I'm not sure, so that's why I'm asking for some more money.
You know approximately how many trials you would have in a year, minus this year?
Yeah, normally we'd have maybe half dozen trials in a year.
More
Jury trials. We have more bench trials, and a lot of times they don't appeal. And sometimes we do a jury trial and they don't want to appeal. So it saves the county money. I had one of those too. So it's just a weird year where, these trials that we're having, there's some serious time. You probably see in the paper. So of course they're going to appeal it.
Anybody else have any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Comment from the public? Hearing none. I have a motion and a second to approve the $16,000 in additionals for the Public Defender's Office. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. All right. Thank you, Mark. Give me just a minute here while we... And for the transfers. All right. First transfer comes to us from the recorder's office in the amount of $500. Department is the recorder's office. This is in the general fund. Amount to be transferred, $500 from account 22730, other operating supplies, to account 34295, training funds and education. Why is this transfer needed? Fund 1001.34295 was inadvertently not budgeted for 2023. A claim was submitted to be paid out of this fund. This request for transfer will transfer funds so that the claim can be paid. Budget for 2024 has been amended to budget correctly. Will an additional appropriation be requested due to this transfer? The answer is no. Was this discussed, or excuse me, got ahead of myself here. And was this discussed with the department liaison? And the answer to that is no. That liaison's name is Councilman Collins. The letter that went along with that from the recorder. Dear DeKalb County Council members, the recorder has discovered that Fund 1001.34295 was inadvertently not requested to be funded for 2023. A claim was submitted for the AIC district meeting in the amount of $90 that cannot be paid. At this time, the recorder is requesting a transfer of funds in order to pay the claim as follows. Transfer $500 from operating supplies, Fund 1001.2273 to Training, Travel, and Education Fund 1001.34295 to cover the shortfall and to cover any possible future needs for the remainder of 2023. Should you desire further explanation, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you for your courtesy and consideration. Sincerely, Lita Hullinger, DeKalb County Recorder. And I have a motion to approve this transfer.
So moved.
Been moved by Councilman Collins. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Kraft. Discussion? Comment? Amy, go ahead.
Is there enough in the operating?
Yes.
And she actually, quite a bit of the recorder's funding comes out of the perpetuation fund, not out of the general fund. All right, any further discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. Next comes a request from Community Corrections from the Project Income Fund in the amount of $7,500. From Community Corrections, Fund Project Income, Fund 1122, the amount to be transferred is $7,500. From account 10750, which is part-time, to account 33440, contractual services. Why is this transfer needed? Transferring the remainder left in the account 10750 part-time that is left over from when we budgeted for Logan Brewer to 34330 contractual services to cover the cognitive behavioral instructor we will be using to teach classes at DeKalb Community Corrections. Will an additional appropriation be requested due to the transfer? The answer is no. Was this discussed with the department liaison? The answer is no, and the liaison's name is Councilwoman Dembski. Can I have a motion to approve this transfer? Been moved by Councilwoman Dembski. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Kraft. Discussion?
Question, did they reach out to you to discuss this with the Amy?
No.
See, that upsets me. That's a sizable amount. I think they should at least have the courtesy to call and discuss it.
I would agree. And normally, I don't know, was this brought up at the board meeting or?
I was out of town. I zoomed in for it. I had a little bit of trouble listening towards the end. It could have been discussed then, but I don't know.
Okay. And this funding is not tax money. This is project income. This is what they're being, what the,
User fees.
user fees, for lack of a better term. And they no longer need the part-time position, I'm assuming.
Logan is full-time with the IT department now, since Jim left, so
Okay.
they don't
Okay,
have that
was
position
what
to
they
fill.
planned for Logan, okay. All right,
I know that after the airport issue last month, I reached out to Russ right away, and it wasn't intentional that he didn't talk to me beforehand. He just missed that. And so we talked right away. He was aware of that. We had a full discussion about what we voted on today. I think sometimes they just need reminders from us, the liaisons.
Usually they
Not
reach
suggesting that
out.
you did anything
No,
there. Amy,
usually
just-
they reach out. It might have just been reaching the deadline for the meeting and to transfer it. I mean, normally we talk every couple of weeks, so
okay. Well, we'll just leave,
I'll reach out so we can have a little bit of clarification.
all right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor of this transfer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. That motion is carried. All right, give me just a minute here. I guess we're actually running on time.
No, we're not.
We're a little behind, but not as far behind as I thought we'd, or not as far ahead as I thought we'd be. Next on the agenda is Randy Fox on the airport.
Morning.
Good
I will
morning.
tell you that before I got home after the last council meeting, I had also talked to Russ.
Yeah, he said that. He must have felt tag team there.
Yes, tag team. Sad news to start off the report with, the passing of Mr. Bob Patterson, one of our board members, very sudden. I think the discussion was 6 weeks from the determination that he was ill until he passed. And so it was very sudden, and we'll miss him a lot. Fun guy. He has a lot of history here within the county, and he will be missed.
Who's, is that a commissioner appointment or is that?
Yes, that's commissioner's appointment. The self-serve fuel system is moving along. We have still some electrical stuff to do. The point of sale, the credit card swipe machine showed up and it was all beat to daylights. And so it got sent back and we're waiting on that to return. There is a test that has to be done where the tank is filled. It has to be checked for leaks, pressure tested, all the plumbing tested, and then we'll put that into service, hopefully sometime late this month, where aircraft will be able to pull into the gas station just like we all do, swipe their card, fill up their tanks, and either fly away or put their plane back in the hangar. So we're looking forward to having that done. I do know that there are 2 aircraft just in the last 2 weeks that relocated up here because we will have self-service fuel where they didn't have it at the airports that they were based at. So we're anticipating this is going to put some big demand on. I think last I knew, we have a waiting list of about 40 people looking for hangars. So, and that hangars, a 6-place hangar, I think is somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500,000 build. So we're not building any of those real fast until the runway's done.
As far as the runway is concerned, you're going to have to close the airport for a period of time?
Yes, actually, the last item on my,
I didn't mean to jump ahead of you.
no, that's fine. We can do that right now. July 28th, the runway will be completely closed. Right now, no one is allowed to land coming in from the east, flying west. There's a great big X. I think last month I sent a picture in that showed an aerial photograph with a big X on the end of the runway. Actually, Russ and Jason are monitoring on a handheld radio, and anytime anybody says they want to come in, that they're approaching from that direction, they have to advise them they can't. The construction workers are out there. We don't want airplanes flying over top of them or someone coming in low enough that they strike some of the equipment, and we have a crash that's not necessary. Once the construction proceeds to where they're putting down pavement and stuff, July 28th, the entire runway is going to be closed, and then we'll reopen on August 29th, and all 7,100 feet will be done. All the lighting will be in, all the markings will be on, and as a part of this project, we're going to displace the threshold. So there'll be a line across the runway where an aircraft coming in can't use the first 600 feet of the runway. And that basically, from the threshold out, is called the runway protection zone. And if we didn't displace the runways, we'd be talking about other roads that had to be impacted by the airport construction, and nobody's interested in that. So the FAA suggested we displace the thresholds on both ends. So the landing distance technically is going to be 6,300 feet for any aircraft from either direction landing. But any aircraft taking off can back up to either end of the runway and use all 7,100 feet to take off. And that gives them that safety margin. So if something happens at the point of rotation and liftoff, they can put it back down on the runway and stop safely without going off across one of our county roads. Again, a major safety issue. That was the reason for that. We did vote to accept a quote pending a federal grant, which my understanding was, as the last meeting, we did receive or will be receiving, to move all of the precision landing equipment. And this allows aircraft to come in when there's fog, rain, whatever, and they can't actually see the runway from any reasonable altitude. They can follow the electronic pathway into the airport and land. Once they come out, they have to see the runway from about 300 feet up to know that they're actually on the runway and not off the edge of it or something. But that equipment then would be installed based on this $4 million project, and a grant that the airport has a certain percentage that we'll pay, the state has a certain percentage they'll pay, and then the federal grant. And with that, I will take any questions.
What's the reason for the 600-foot displacement on landing, Randy? Why is it?
Well, I mean, we closed County Road 29, and that was a crisis. It really was, and it went on for years. If we put the threshold right at County Road 31, where the runway ends now, then we would actually ask to close County Road 31 as a part of the runway protection zone. If we move the threshold back 600 feet from the end of the runway, now we don't have any impact on County Road 31. We don't have any impact on County Road 427. We get a 7,000-foot runway. 6,300 feet for landing is certainly adequate. When I was flying, the runway was 2,200 feet long. Riki Corporation had the longest-serving aircraft department of any company in the country that flew out of our airport. When they touched their twin down, they had to touch down on the numbers, go to full reverse prop, full braking, and usually got stopped on the numbers at the other end of the runway. So, no room for error. And so now the whole idea is that we will have that safety margin, room for error, and that we don't impact any of the other county infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Randy? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Randy.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. That moves us on. Why don't you have somebody call Ben that we might get to them earlier?
I might be able to just tell.
Yeah, okay. Next item of business is an amendment to the salary and wage ordinance. And the reason for this, because we just did this last month, what's the...
The reason for this is because I just typed it in wrong.
Okay,
It was just me.
okay. So we're just correcting what we did last month.
Yep.
All right. And do you have a paper copy for me?
Can you see it?
All right. All right, this is first reading by title only, 2023 Salary and Hourly Wage Ordinance Amendment, DeKalb County Council, ordinance number 2023-OCC-7, amending ordinance 2023-OCC-1. Job classification with wage ranges by department. Department is Health Department. Even though I only have to do this by title only, I am going to show this is the part-time RN salary, which is $42.98 per hour maximum. I have a motion to approve salary ordinance 2023-OCC-7 on first reading. And moved by Councilman Kraft. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Yard. Discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor of passing ordinance 2023-OCC-7 on first reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. Next, I need a motion to suspend the rules and read this on second and third readings.
So moved.
Been moved by Councilman Yard. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Kraft. Discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor of suspending the rules and reading this on second and third readings by title only signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. Ordinance 2023 Salary and Hourly Wage Ordinance Amendment, DeKalb County Council, ordinance number 2023-OCC-7. Can I have a motion to approve this on second and third readings?
So moved.
Rick, was that you?
Yes.
Yeah. Motion by Councilman Collins.
Second.
Amy, second by Councilwoman Prosser. Discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. Save that. All right. I'm going to jump ahead, if that's okay, in the, and ask that we acknowledge the receipt of the January to June 2023 commissary report from the Sheriff's Department. I have a motion to acknowledge receipt.
So moved.
Been moved by Councilman Yard. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Dembski. Discussion? Comment from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion is carried. All right. We did not have any specific topics on the Commissioner Council agenda. The only comment I would like to make, and I guess we may talk about it again as council, but I think it's going to be important for our information for the prep of the 2024 budget, that the commissioners make a decision on whether to opt in or opt out by the time we start preparing the budget in mid-August. I know we have to notify the state by September 1, but we're going to have a discussion based on what we're going to budget for the health department, and this could have a big effect on that.
Yeah, and Cheryl needs time to work that in, excuse me, to her budget too. So we've had some preliminary discussion on that. We will, on the 24th, I believe, take public comment and vote on either opting in or not the following meeting.
Okay. And I would encourage all the council members to either be at one of those meetings and make public comment, or at least send in a written opinion as to whether we should opt in or opt out. I am going to be gone for both meetings, so I will be sending in something in writing to the commissioners. But
Okay.
let the commissioners know how you feel about it, because it will have a big effect on how we budget for the health department for next year. So,
Well, and I think a substantial impact on what the health department's able to accomplish too. I know there's some keen interest in public comment, so I'm looking forward to that.
okay. Anything else?
Mike referenced the 24th of July for one of those meetings. What was the second meeting?
31st.
The following. Okay, thank you.
And in your packet is a document from the State Health Department specific to DeKalb County and what is going to be available to us. Dave, you had,
Yeah, Mike, I've been getting a lot of inquiries on the County Road 52 project. Any update or anything on that right now?
52 or 56?
56, I'm sorry.
That's still a 2024, possibly 2025 project.
Okay, so it's good pushback.
Well, that's actually a little ahead of where we were. There's been some substantial cost increases on that project, so we're still a lot of moving parts there. We're hoping that NDOT's going to be able to participate at a larger amount than what they'd originally talked about. And we're also going to talk to the Redevelopment Commission. The RDC had pledged
300,000.
300,000. And they're open to a request for some additional funding there too. So, but that project is considerably, for a couple of reasons. They ran into a big peat problem out there, which substantially added to the cost. But I mean, just like everything else has gone through the roof. So that project, our share of that is going to be substantially higher than what was originally anticipated.
Are we getting some federal funding for that project as well, or just state?
That's 80%. Well, now,
Ben, is that 80 or 75? County Road 56 project? 80/20.
okay, yeah.
And that is a very important project. That road is used heavily, I think pretty much 24 hours a day. People going from the east side, or the west side of the county to 69, people from as far away as Columbia City, the west side west of DeKalb County use that to get to 69. So it's a heavily used road. And it's,
Accidents and people are rerouted.
So I can tell you that, because I've been more involved with the redevelopment commission since taking office, and this project has been in the works since 2017. And in 2017, the estimate for what our county 20% match would be was just around 700,000. Our 20% now is over $1 million because of everything increasing. So that just gives you an estimate of how much higher it is, and also why Mike Watson had explained that they're going to ask if the redevelopment would have put any more money to it.
well, there was a large section of bad soil that needs to be taken care of, that really upped the project. And we didn't even take the most expensive fix for that bad soil, the moderate.
The bids for that project will be let in January of '24.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, anything else for the commissioners? All right. All right, we're running a little farther behind than I thought we would, but let's take a very short break, and we'll come back and we'll open up the discussion on the wheel tax. We'll start with, I've got a couple comments to make, but then we're going to start with with Ben Parker from the Highway Department discussing our expenses. And what it costs to, maintain the roads here in the county. But I've also asked the cities and towns to be here to at least hear the discussion, because this is strictly education. This is not, we are not going to vote today. We want to be educated on what having a wheel tax means, and what not having one, what that would mean. So anyway, it's 20 after. Let's try to be back here in 5 minutes if we can be. All right, so we'll recess for 5 minutes. Okay. We can, when we come back, we'll start with that real quick so we don't forget about it. All right? You guys have.
All right.
Thing. How you been?
Not bad, no?
Good. Yep, just keep plugging away.
Oh, yeah. One day at a time, right?
What gets done, gets done.
Can't really do much about it if how you doing? Don't pay to get too upset about too much anything anymore these days. Submit again this month for CCMG?
Yeah, that's fine. If I even get it, I'm not getting all emails at the moment, so, but yes, that would be fine.
Susan, did Debbie send you an email with a draft of the ordinance?
Yes,
Just want to make sure.
Yes.
I'm in calling.
yes, she did. Yes, and I made sure that it was posted.
Nope, sorry, just got me at this point. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for matching. $1 million match. We're 50-50. County's 80-20 or whatever. Are they? 25-25? Oh, that's not a 6. That's what was wrong.
You know, it's worked out okay. I'm in the corner there. Right across from the courthouse. That's right, that's right.
All right.
Let's see if we can bring everybody back together. All right. What has prompted this relook at the wheel tax has been our financial advisor, goes out 5 years as to what our standing is with each one of our funds. And he has shown, actually for 2 years running now, that in 2025, the highway department will be underwater based on funding that we get through the state gas tax and through the funnels to us from the state. Don't know where that is with the cities and towns. I just know that fact from our county fund financial report. So that has prompted us to look at this tax again. DeKalb County has looked at this a number of times. We've voted against it or declined to implement the wheel tax at least once, if not twice, since I've been on council for the last 10 years that we've declined. But with where the highway department is beginning in 25 is why we're looking at this again. The wheel tax actually comes to us in 2 different forms. One for basically passenger vehicles, motorcycles, one for more industrial, like semis, trailers, things like that, farm equipment. And you cannot pass one ordinance without the other. You can't do just passenger cars or just the more industrial. You have to have both, or it's not effective, or it can't go into effect. I have asked the cities and towns to be here today. Those that could be are here. Others, this is recorded, so they'll be able to listen in or look at this later, and we can all review this again later. But I would have to believe that if our money from the state is declining, the money to the cities and towns is also declining. And any wheel tax that we implement is shared with the cities and towns. It does not all come to the county. It is shared with all cities and towns. And we do have an estimate from our financial advisor as to what funds this could bring in. And he's also got that broken down into what the cities and towns would possibly receive. And while I didn't think to have a copy of that made, but we might want to make a copy of that spreadsheet that Jeff gave us earlier, so that we can have, I do have it.
On it?
Yeah, the data is coming from August of last year. That's the newest data that's available. But it's not going to have changed that much because it's, of course, based on the number of vehicles registered in the county at the time. So with that being said, Ben, I think we're going to start with you and the situation that we have with the county highway. And Ben did bring Brad Stump, which is one of our engineers firms that we use for the highway department. What do we got here? 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, maybe 18, 20. Did you get the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
That's the one. We'll make copies of that spreadsheet for everybody. Anytime you're ready, Ben.
Okay. Well, I put together quite a bit of information here for everybody.
Ben, are you on?
It's on, yes.
Thank you.
Rick got a hold of me last week and asked me to attend the meeting today and bring the numbers I could, so I reached out to Brad Stump. Help me. We got to get a lot of data here in a short amount of time. So thank you for your assistance with that, Brad. I appreciate that. So the discussion, I guess, today is of the wheel tax. I did include in this packet, there's an LTAP seminar that was given back, it was before COVID. I cannot give you the exact date. It was probably around the 2020. This was given at the Commissioners Conference. And this, if you look through that, this will kind of tell you where we started with the funding of the highway departments with the gas tax from the House bills that's passed over the years, changing the gas tax percentage that comes to the locals, more to the state. It even talks about in House Bill 1001 when they established the Community Crossings Matching Grant. You go on down through, it goes all the way down to 1002 where they've changed the local shares. And then House Bill 1290 was the last biggest one that took the MVH funding down to immediate 38%. And that's when that has really hurt on the locals. If you look, keep going down the chart into the back here, it will actually show you the ranges. I'm not sure what page it's on. I should have marked these a little bit for you. Of the percentages that NDOT is receiving. Here it is. You look at the front here. So back in 2017, we was pretty much neck and neck from 14, 15, 16, and 17 on our funding. Then you can see the differences from 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, where they're showing 22, NDOT's received 133%, and then the local agencies is at 43%. So that's what started this downward spiral. along with the 50% rule that they established on the locals to how we spend our gas money. So that means that our MVH funds that come in is split automatically 50-50 at the door. So 50% of it has to go for construction, reconstruction, preservation. And then the rest of it's operating expenses. So in that, the 50% rule, snow plowing, salting and sanding is considered maintenance. That can't come out of the restricted fund.
And that was, we spent an enormous amount of time during this past legislature trying to get that rule changed. And had some success in the Senate, and then it just fell apart in the House because they were not willing to change that restricted, unrestricted percentage at all. So we will be working on it again for the next legislative session, although I think we've determined that better than going with a percentage change, get better definition as to what is preservation and what is maintenance so that we can increase the amounts or dollars that are allowed to be spent on the maintenance of the road. The other thing is there was a bill in the legislature which passed, which extended the gas tax that was supposed to decrease. They've extended it for another 2 years, so it did allow another $52 million to county and local road and highway departments. But that, again, is only a 2-year extension. And how that $52 million is going to be divided up is anybody's guess. We don't have a projection on that yet. That original thing was built that way, Amy. If you go back, the State Highway Department was underwater back more than 10 years ago. And when they built the original reconfiguration of what's in that gas tax, it was meant for both city, county and or locals and the state to go up. And then if you look at what happened, it was intentional that the state would continue to go up and the locals would level off or go down. It was built that way.
It's real important what he mentioned about snow plowing and salt removal, because that's what really makes this restricted and unrestricted funds unfair, because we spend way more up here in the north part of the state on salt and snow removal than all the counties in the south part of the state. They might spend hardly, a fraction of what we spend, but still have the same ratio, same percentage.
The other thing to remember too is that the highway department is strictly funded off of the gas tax. We do not operate off of the general fund off the county. So we are funded strictly by the gas tax. So when this cut comes in, it's hard on the counties to survive. We still have the same amount of infrastructure, our costs go up, and that's the shortfall that we're looking at today is because of that. So, but anyway, I thought that was important for you guys to have that, for you can kind of see the history of where we was at and why. And I do remember some of these meetings that we was at when this come out in 16 and 17. It was, they didn't hide it. The state was saying that they wanted the locals to be more self-funding, to generate their own revenues, and then the state wanted to have what they've gotten, because the locals can enact a wheel tax, can do more for funding. The state level is stuck at the gas tax, without increasing the gas tax as a whole. So this was their solution, my understanding, their solution to fixing the deficit within DOT and leaving it up to the locals. So we've done, I think, really well over the years. I can show you as we go forward in our asset where we've been gaining, but as we have the shortfall coming and our costs go up, at some point we are going to lose ground. So I'm going to let Brad Stump speak here a little bit since he put this spreadsheet together. He can probably knows a little bit better than I do. So if you don't mind speaking there, Brad.
Thank you. The document we'll be talking about kind of looks like this on the front. It's just a series of bullet points to start things off. First couple you can ignore. I put them on there because I'm a history geek, and I just wanted to mention the fact that hard surface roads are over 4,000 BC, or that's when they started at that point. So Ben and I were joking about the fact that hard surface roads are actually older than Christ. So now, actual bituminous paving started in the 1800s, but really became common after World War II. This is really sounding funny. When they were first put in hard surface roads years ago, the maintenance process was to build the road and then walk away from it and basically do next to nothing until the road itself started to degrade to the point where you had to go in and do a complete resurface. That's been proven to be very expensive and unsustainable from a budget standpoint. So starting about 30 or so years ago, the push began to try to move towards actual preventative maintenance and protect what you've got in terms of an asset so that it lasts longer, doesn't need as much maintenance. And that's really gained ground over the last 10 to 15 years. And that's kind of where we are today. Preventative maintenance is the most cost-effective way to extend a pavement life, far and away. You can do something like 18 to 20 miles of chip seal, which is a preventative maintenance process, compared to 1 mile of laying down new asphalt. If you look at the number of miles you have in this county, we've got 704 miles, of which 425 are paved. That's 425 miles. If you did 1 mile of that, maybe you can do 6 or 8 per year. That's going to take you way past the service life of the initial series of asphalt pavement that you put down. By the time you get to the end, have to cycle back to the beginning. So you've got to preserve what's there. The process for that is you actually inventory the roads, which DeKalb County is doing. There's a method that University of Wisconsin created that everyone uses pretty much in the state. The state has their own that they used initially. It's very, very difficult to do, so even they've moved to this. It's called the PACER system. Every 2 years we go out, or Ben's crews can go out, whoever has the time and the availability can go out and actually survey every paved road in the county. Growing up in DeKalb County, I've driven roads I've never been on after having lived here since the 80s.
Brad, before you go any farther there, would that be the asset management plan?
That's part of the asset management plan. That's half of it because there's 2 parts. There's the road asset management plan, or RAMP, and the bridge asset management plan, or BAMP.
And just a point of information, there is one tweak to the wheel tax. You can have one amount maximum with no asset management plan, and that maximum increases if you do have an asset management plan. DeKalb County has one, and I believe that all the cities and towns have one also. So that is available to go up to that maximum amount, which is, if you, in that chart that they passed out, that where it says max with an AMP is the asset management plan.
Because NDOT did put in their community crossing matching grant, for anyone to be eligible, they have to have an approved asset.
Right, which is the community crossings money coming in. That's different than our gas tax money, right? So that's an additional that we do get from the state.
Right. And the county, if I remember right, did not qualify for the very first year that the CCMGs were available because the county did not have an asset management plan at that point. It had been discussed over the years, and every time it was brought up by county employees, the commissioners at the time decided they didn't want to go down that route. And after that first year, they realized we need to step into this and actually be eligible. And they've done a good job since then. I think they've got $1 million every year, if I remember right.
Pardon? Yes.
Yes. Yep, can do that. Once you've inventoried the roads, you need to establish what mix of fixes you're going to do to those roads and the cost. And Ben's done a good job of that, determining what he's going to do to the roads in terms of asphalt overlay or chip seal, what have you, and come up with a cost. You then take the pavement ratings, you take the mix of fixes that you're going to apply to those, and you can use that to determine the budget. That's where you kind of are today at this point. It's where a lot of communities in the state of Indiana are at. Many are working on this. Some have done it. Some have done it very successfully. Boone County is doing a great job of this. I recommend you kind of look at what they're doing if you get an opportunity. We helped them do an asset management plan, and their council and commissioners were very forward thinking. LaGrange County is in the process of doing it right now. And they're going even one step farther, and we're looking at bridges, small structures, signage, the whole 9 yards. Today, the focus is just on the roads, but eventually you'll circle back and look at everything because NDOT requires you to look at the whole package. Second page is just some general information, shows the miles broken down by rating and by surface type. It looks like this. That gives you an idea what you have in terms of poor versus good roads, asphalt versus gravel, chip seal. Gravel and stone show up on here both. They're really the same thing. I'm not sure why when they programmed this initially, our guys put gravel and chip and stone both in there, but as you can see, you've got just under 704 miles, and you can see how it's broken down. Now, we've done ratings for the county since 2016, 2017, and the bottom table shows the ratings over time. If you look down towards the bottom, you can see it says average rating. When we started doing this for DeKalb County, your average road rating was 5.23 per mile. It's on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. So you were just right at mid-range. In the course of the 6 years, from 2016 to 2022, the commissioners and Ben's efforts have raised that average to 6.3, which is a pretty decent increase in a short time period. A big chunk of that has been CCMG funds. That's really helped because, again, you've got $1 million a year over almost every one of those years. CCMG, Community Crossings Matching Grant. It's a mouthful, so almost everybody I know abbreviates it because it's so much quicker. Now, also as a part of that, not only has he increased the average rating, but if you look at the areas that are shaded in yellow versus green, those are 1 to 4, road ratings 1 to 4, the lowest end. In 2016, there was 166 miles of roads that were rated 1 to 4. In 2022, there's 67 miles. So almost 100 miles have been improved out of that low range. The reason that's significant is because LTAP, the Local Technical Assistance Program, it's a group of engineers and other people at Purdue who work under contract for NDOT to deal with road matters. They did a traffic safety study with Boone County, and the results showed that roads with a rating of 4 or less are significantly more likely to cause a traffic accident than roads rated 5 or higher. So the efforts that the commissioners and Ben have put into this have raised the amount of roads in that low area by well over half, almost 2/3. That needs to continue. One of the goals the county should set is to have no roads under 5. Granted, there are times one may slip, but you don't want to have any roads in that area, and that takes continued funding. Now, the next couple
Brad,
pages. Sure.
In the ratings,
Yes.
gravel roads are not rated?
Gravel
Only-
roads are
only
not,
paved?
they're not rated, not required to be rated by the state of Indiana.
Okay.
And part of that's because, without getting too technical on it, gravel roads can change multiple times in a year depending on what happens. Pavement's pavement, and generally it's fairly stable. Gravel road may start off in poor condition, you grade it, it's in decent condition, you get a heavy rain that soaks the base and it gets beat up by traffic, it's in poor condition again. It can yo-yo up and down multiple times. Gravel roads are still less expensive to maintain per mile, but they're very fluid, I guess, is one way to put it. They change rapidly and often, so they're not as stable. So there's pros and cons to converting gravel roads to paved roads. That's something every county has to deal with. There are a couple counties at one point which were converting paved roads to gravel roads. It was rare, but there were cases where they just couldn't maintain them. I think that's been reversed. That's been about 15 or 20 years ago, but it was rare.
In the ratings, this is kind of a silly question maybe, but there's nothing in the rating per se about how the traffic on a certain road, right? That's more in your decision-making on what
Yes.
roads you're going to do. That's when you take traffic counts into effect.
Yeah, the roads, and I should have brought them with me. I might actually have them in there. I don't know. I can show you, but there's a series of documents that state of Michigan's put together based on what Wisconsin did. Everybody kind of keeps tweaking it, taking it one step farther. And it shows what each road should be rated based on the type of distresses that are there, whether it's alligator cracking, longitudinal cracks in the wheel path, things of that nature. Yeah. This is kind of what they look like. I know it's kind of hard to see from a distance, but it gives you the rating, gives you what each, like asphalt 6, transverse cracks less than 10 feet apart, initial block cracking 6 to 10 foot blocks, cracks open a quarter to a half an inch, several things in there. And then it tells you at the bottom what the suggested fix is for that road. So in this case, maintain with the seal coat. So you put a chip seal on top of it. There are rating systems for asphalt, for chip seal, for concrete. There are even rating systems for brick, which we don't have to deal with. LaGrange County, actually the city of LaGrange does in a couple cases. Once you've got all the roads rated, then when you look at what we're going to work on, you look at the road ratings. And when you've got ties where you say, okay, these roads are equally poor, they both need work, then you start looking at, this has got a much higher traffic count. Let's do this first. So yeah, it's one part of it, but it's not a critical part, at least in the initial part of the process. Now, one thing that makes it difficult to determine how much money you need is you've got to determine what you're going to actually spend on a road. And what we've done is, third page in this document, we've actually put together a sample or example life cycle cost for an asphalt or chip seal road. Now, you guys in this county do both microsurface and also chip seal. There are two very different fixes, usually on very different types of roads. So we've actually put together a life cycle cost for both. Year one would be reconstruction, or if the road's in decent enough shape, it might only be an HMA overlay. But then a couple years later, you would do a crack fill. By year 8, you would do, in this case, you'd do a microsurface. Year 14, you'd come around ready for another microsurface. By doing this, you can estimate what the cost will be. By the time you reach the 30th year, you've just about used that pavement up to the point where you need to go back and start at the top of the list again. So by doing that, you can calculate, here's how much the total life cycle cost is. We can divide that by 30 years. And this is what the road would cost on average per year, per mile. Multiply that by the number of miles you've got, and then you can see what you would need to actually have every year to do the maintenance. You're obviously not going to do every road reconstruction every year. It's going to be once every 30 years. But in theory, 1/30 of your roads would be reconstructed every year if everything falls the way it should. Things intervene, heavy traffic patterns change, weather changes and beats up the roads more or less. So there's some fluidity to this, but at least it gives you an idea from a budget standpoint how you can approach this. Second page shows where those calculations come into play. In the very top, there's a box. It says asphalt and chip seal roads using microsurface treatments. We assumed about 7.5% of your total mileage would be microsurface treatments. That's based on the roads that Ben has done or has said he likely will do in the future. It's based on the types of roads themselves. 427, County Road 427, south of State Road 8, south of 205, is one that Ben microsurface because it's a quicker process. It holds up fairly well, and that road has quite a bit of traffic. Same thing with 327. Same thing with County Road 40 and 40A east of City of Auburn. And there's a list at the bottom of that previous page that says which roads we assumed would be microsurface based on the history. Of those roads that are microsurfaced, we've assumed 10% would be reconstructed. The other 90% would not require reconstruction, just be an overlay. That was based on the road ratings. Anything that's a 2 is reconstruction. Anything that's a 3, good chance it's a reconstruction. So most of those are going to be that way. Partly because some of them are in bad shape themselves, partly because some of them will fall to a 2 before you get to them. Anything that's a 4, a smaller percentage, but even a few of those you might consider to be candidates for microsurface or for reconstruction. By making those determinations, we can figure out the number of centerline miles. We can use the average per mile cost per year from the previous sheet. We can come up with the amount of money that it would take to handle or cover the reconstruction maintenance plan cost for that year. Below it, the same type calculations were repeated with the remaining 90%. Those are the ones that don't require reconstruction. At the end of this calculations list, you can see that approximately $412,000 is the total annual cost for the microsurfaced roads. Most of that will be spent on the roads that are actually being microsurfaced that year, but that's kind of the average annual cost based on the life cycle cost that we calculated previously. Below that, that's just some of the information we use for the calculations. We show the road ratings and the number of miles, similar to what was on that table earlier. We show the asphalt maintenance costs. Those are numbers Ben has provided based on his experience and the contracts he's got. Those numbers vary from county to county. For example, chip seal is $13,000 in DeKalb County per mile, approximately. It's $30 in LaGrange. Coming from LaGrange County, growing up there, that floored me until Ben reminded me there are almost no gravel pits in LaGrange County, so they ship everything in terms of aggregate. We don't have that problem here, luckily. So we have to use local costs, and Ben's been great about coming up with that information. Next page, very similar to the previous one. It's the chip seal maintenance plan for asphalt roads. Same type process. I won't go through it, but it does have a lower life cycle cost per mile because chip seal is much cheaper to do than microsurface. Next page, same type calculations for chip seal. Now the difference here is in the bottom, there's a large red block. And that block shows some calculations that we are just beginning to do. We need to get more information from the auditor, from you guys. Ben and I need to come up with some stuff. But it shows the total annual pavement maintenance cost. We have the calculated information for microsurface and chip seal from what we just talked about a second ago. Concrete, we have not figured that out yet. Luckily, it's not critical for DeKalb County. You have 2.5 miles of concrete road. If you had to repair them all tomorrow, it would not be significant because it's such a small number compared to everything else that you've got. Gravel and stone, that's an estimate Ben put in here at the moment. It's probably going to have to go up at some point. That's not the gravel and stone he uses for his chip seal process. That's the gravel and stone that's put on existing gravel roads to repair defects or to do maintenance. Signage, we have a 0 at this point, but Ben every year goes through and replaces some portion of the county's signs. Typically, these signs have a 10-year lifespan. After that, you need to start doing testing to make sure that they meet the retroreflectivity standards. There's an expensive piece of equipment you can stick up against it, pull the trigger, sends light out, checks the reflectivity. That can work if you have it and want to spend the money on it. We recommend what we call the old man test. I qualify for it. I'm old enough, I can go out at night. I have to do it at night. I drive, I look at the road, I look at the sign, and when the light hits it, if it's a significant enough distance, the sign's still good and it qualifies. I would like to say I'm not qualified to do that, but I'm sorry. Unfortunately, time waits for no man. Marking and striping. That's something that needs to be done almost every year. And this is something we've really struggled with. We cannot find, neither Ben or I or the engineers in our company, we cannot find any good authoritative source on the life cycle or lifespan of the various paint types. You'd think somebody at some point would have done that. If they have, they're keeping it very close to the vest. Basic paint typically lasts a year. We know that. But you start getting into some of the beaded paint, some of the thermoplastic, things of that nature, we need to come up with that. That's part of your road maintenance that eventually needs to be covered in this. And that's something that would be covered by a wheel tax or any other funding source you come up with from a road maintenance standpoint. Right now, your maintenance funds are $1.9 million in the DeKalb County Highway Department annual budget. And the commissioners for this year have given $1.2 million from seeded, or I don't know how it's pronounced, lighted. That's something that didn't exist when I worked for the county many, many years ago, or it was named something else. I'm not sure yet which. But if you look at those funding expenses, county has a funding shortfall from a maintenance needs standpoint of $950,000 approximately, not counting again the funding that needs to be added for concrete, adjusted for signage, gravel, stones, marking, striping. So it's probably going to go up, most likely. So far, the county has covered that shortfall because they've got $1 million from the state, and that's been used in DeKalb County strictly for road maintenance. The state allows you to use it for bridges or roads. It's your choice how you want to do it, or a mix of the two. Some counties use it one way or the other. DeKalb County has always used it for road network at this point. If that goes away, your $950,000 shortfall is going to rear its ugly head at that point. So we recommend to any of the clients we work with, don't count on the discretionary funds as a part of your core maintenance. When you get that, use that to catch up. Use that to get ahead. Use that on a different focus. You know, in your case, maybe you don't need to use it on roads if you can cover the shortfall elsewhere. And this year, when you get it, hey, we've got a couple bridges that need it. Bridges are expensive. You can use it to work on a bridge or two. Next year, you can shift it back to roads if you need to. It gives you that flexibility because seeded funds are not always guaranteed as well. Commissioners may need some of that for a project because there are times, it stands for community economic development. There are times that maybe need to be used for that. So you need to find some way to cover that shortfall, and a wheel tax is a very good way. It's a fair tax, assuming the rates are set correctly, because it's used for what it's intended to be used for. It's not a tax that can be pulled in for some reason, and then all of a sudden we're going to shift it and use it for something else, and the first initial reason it was collected is gone. The state did that with the aviation fuel sales tax for years. They pulled it in, put it on roads, never used it for airports. There finally was a big hue and cry, and now half of it by law has to be used for airports, which makes sense. It's an aviation fuel tax.
And that is a good point to make, in that if we were to enact the wheel tax, it must go into roads.
Yes.
I've made comment at the different meetings that we've had about this, that the fact that we're going into a new highway garage, this would have absolutely nothing to do with that garage. These funds would absolutely have to go to the roads itself.
Yes, and that's critical. Another reason for that, for putting that into the roads and getting away from the reliance to cover the shortfall on the CCMG, is the fact that, as Ben and I were kind of joking, Caesar giveth, Caesar taketh away. NDOT at this point is giving you that, but I don't know how many of you remember when the lottery first came out, there was something called Build Indiana Fund. That was money that was going to come back to the local communities, and we were going to use all sorts of local projects and economic development. That lasted 2, maybe 3 years. And then the state said, we're going to keep that. One of our commissioners at the time, I think it might have been Connie Miles, actually talked to a state legislator about that and said, hey, this was supposed to come back for local project. To his credit, he was honest. He said, you don't think we're going to trust you local people with that money, do you? So that CCMG money now looks great, and it's working for us, but there's no guarantee it's going to stay there. So you've got to find a way to get off that from a reliance standpoint and use that to supplement. So the wheel tax will do that because, as Rick pointed out, it's specifically designed solely for road maintenance.
Now, going back to the gas tax, it's a moving target because cars are getting better gas mileage. All vehicles are getting better gas mileage, and we're pushing that limit up every year. And then with electric vehicles and things like that, the amount of gas being used is going down. And who knows what's going to happen with the state looking at the entire taxing structure this summer. Now, they aren't going to do anything until '26, but they've got a year now that they're going to be studying all the taxes that we have, from property tax to income tax to special use taxes. All of this is going to change. We are going to need to cover ourselves here with what we have available as a tool.
That's a good point, because most of us also remember when the state put the property tax caps on and changed the way things were done. They took certain things away and said, we'll cover this, and then they shoved more things down and started putting local communities at risk by basically requiring them to do more with less. That could happen again. So again, you need to find a local way that the state has more trouble screwing with to fund your needed road maintenance, and wheel tax is one of those ways. Last thing, the last sheet is just road miles by surface type. It's in there mainly for, looks like this, by surface type and township. It just shows the number of miles of asphalt, chip seal, concrete, stone in each one of your townships, and then shows the total percentage at the bottom. This was done because there was some question of converting gravel roads, which in and of itself is not a bad idea depending on the road. But just to say we're going to convert all our gravel roads unfortunately, is fairly short-sighted. It's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. It's a case where the highway department commissioners need to look at the roads that are out there that are gravel and say, okay, these 6 miles or 8 miles or 12 miles total need to be converted because they carry a significant amount of traffic and or they're significant for other reasons for the community. But just to convert all gravel roads, it's a losing proposition because it is going to cost you quite a bit more at the end of the day. That's all I have at the moment, unless there's anything else you can think of you want to talk about.
There's 2 maps in there. One is just the road surface map, DeKalb County. Kind of shows you our surface type, the asphalt, concrete, stone. Then on the other one is actually our road rating map. I didn't print them all. I want to print them all bigger, but I didn't have enough paper. But this has got our road rating, so if you look at the roads, it will show you the rating numbers on them roads. 1 to 10. That's all I have, and like I said, these numbers here that Brad put together is off our current road mileage that is the current 420 some is paid. So remember, as and if we do convert more, that cost will remain. Also, just for basically all for the hard tops at this point. Anybody got any questions or anything for us?
Mrs. Hines, you come on up here to the podium if you would.
Brad, I did have just one quick question, or Ben, either one. With the influx of the Amish community into our county, are we noticing that some of these numbers, when we inspect these roads, changing in those districts? I mean, I know it's fairly new.
That we just had that discussion during when they done the buggy tax. They are moving into this area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to see where.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a hard question to answer at this point because I don't know how quick they're going to move, how much they're going to travel our roads, but
Right.
it is something we're monitoring, and it is a concern.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, this is going to increase our maintenance, I'm sure.
On hard surfaces.
Yes, on hard surface. Because they do chip the stone and the horses run on. The horses have a carbide chute. It's more the horses than the buggy.
Mm-hmm.
They actually got like a cleat on them.
Right.
When it chips the stone, and that creates a little pocket of hole, then when we get water, freezing thaws, that starts to pop. Horse will rust. But it's very hard on the paved road. So at some point, we'll have a lot of business in a certain area. How far they go from north.
LaGrange County and Elkhart County are dealing with that right now. LaGrange County, as a matter of fact, developed a process they call horse troughing, where they've got a machine that they also developed that goes down and lays a fairly wide horse trough out. It's a Band-Aid. It does improve the quality of the road a little bit, improves the ride a little bit, but it also is not a long-term solution. So you will have to, once that starts to have an impact, you will have to do more overall road maintenance for those sections.
Hello, Terry Hines. I live on the gravel road on County Road 39. And the reason I'm here and was here last month is because I want my road paved. Chip and sealed or paved, I don't care, just so it's not a gravel road anymore. And one of the things I noticed in Ben's budget, they are only looking at roads that are in poor condition or highly traveled. There's no funds budgeted anywhere in his budget for somebody just like me who lives on a fine gravel road but wants it chip and sealed or paved. And he's already at a $950,000 shortfall to his budget. And unless there's a wheel tax added, he gets more funds. Somebody like me never has a shot at getting their road paved. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm not even included in that budget anywhere. So thank you.
Appreciate your comments, and just to remind you, we're not going to be voting on anything today, but at our August meeting, which the date escapes me right now, whatever the second Tuesday is, August the 8th, we will be voting on it at that time, and whatever public comment we can get, because there are going to be people on both sides of this fence want that gravel road paved, and there are going to be others that don't want the gravel road paved. So we're going to need to hear from everybody. I don't know where the farmers stand on this. A few that I've talked to would really prefer the road not be paved, because that just encourages more traffic, more people to live on that road, and kind of starts to invade the farming space. Build a house on, you build a house on a 2 acre or 3, 4, 5 acre plot of ground out there. They want their road paved, which increases our expenses, but that takes that amount of ground out of farm production permanently. Unlike some of the other issues that are out there where after 25 or 30 years, you can return it to farm ground. Once you build a house on it, it's gone forever. And I think that point needs to be made, but, yes, Brad?
One other thing to think about from that standpoint, and I'm speaking from my experience as a county plan director, when you have somebody move out to the rural part of the county, it causes quite a few issues that people don't think about. First of all, you've got another home out there for emergency services to respond to. You've got another home out there for school buses to drive to, both of which increase the overall cost to the citizens as a whole because taxes support those two things. You've got additional traffic on a road that's traveled typically by farm equipment, which causes conflicts at that point. My father was a state trooper for years and dealt with that in LaGrange County and then in DeKalb County as well. And it's a significant problem. The other thing is, and this we noticed from a planning standpoint, it was funny but frustrating. Every person who moves to the country is the last person that should be allowed to move to the country. I got out of the city and moved out to the country. By God, now my neighbor wants to put up a house. I don't want anybody next to me. That's why I moved here. That's very frustrating from the Plan Commission standpoint. We always had to deal with that. And I don't know how many people we upset because we said, sorry, you got the right to move, so does he. The response often was, when are you guys up for a re-election? That's how frustrating people can get with that. So there's a lot of reasons for looking at not increasing the amount of rural development beyond just losing agricultural land, and all are very valid.
Well, not only that, but, city people don't tend to deal with the smells of the country very, very well. So that kind of offends. And you know what? The country is for farmers. That's who belongs there. All right. Any other questions for Brad or for Ben at this point?
I have one question.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how this works. I wrote it down. So our gas tax money that we get for DeKalb County, does that come from, does all the gas tax funding go in a pot and it's divided among the counties? Or is that our portion of gas tax money for gas we're purchasing in our county? Does that make sense?
It's not the gas tax from your county. It's a statewide.
Okay, so it's one pot and then, okay.
They split it up between counties and cities and towns. There's a portion that goes into each pool of money, and then it's split based on some formula that NDOT knows, but nobody else seems to be able to figure out.
Okay.
In the case of counties, it's based strictly on the certified road mileage. And that's why we work with a lot of our clients to go through every couple of years, verify that all the roads that they should have are actually in NDOT's inventory. Cities and towns, it's a combination of road mileage as well as the overall population of the community. Again, some formula which we've tried to get explained, and the people we've asked don't know, and they don't know who to talk to. So, it doesn't come back to you based on yours specifically. You could be giving more or less in and getting less or more out.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did ask of the area counties that had a wheel tax to provide us with their ordinance. And of the 4-county area that we normally look at, Ben, LaGrange, DeKalb, and Noble, we are the one without the wheel tax. Also included, those 3 sent me their tax documents, their ordinance. But I also got Wells County and Whitley County are there. Actually, if you've not seen it, Amy did put that into a chart that she sent to each one of the council people, comparing where those rates are.
I printed it out. It is at everybody's seat.
Okay, so you've got that. If you take this chart that our financial advisor gave us, The upper portion of that is the passenger vehicles, which includes passenger vehicles, trucks of less than 11,000 pounds, motorcycles, and mopeds, essentially. And the chosen rates that they had there are $25 for each of those vehicles, the mopeds at $7.50. You go across where it says branch fees, those, I did have to get clarification on that from the financial advisor. Those are fees that the county would pay to the BMV for the collection. So that would come out of whatever dollar amount we've assigned.
They're set by statute, you don't have any.
Okay, but it does come from the part that we've collected, it would be paid to them, yeah. And then you see the minimum and maximum amounts that would be generated, and those numbers are supposed to be minus the branch fees. And just for those passenger vehicles, trucks and motorcycles, the maximum without a surtax, without a asset management plan, it would generate $979,611. If we do have an asset management plan, we could make that a $50 maximum. And in this case, the chosen rates were the lower amount. And that would be our discretion. We could set that fee wherever we want up to the maximum, if that's the direction we want to go. Down below is technically the title for the commercial type vehicles is the wheel tax. That runs through buses, church buses, city buses, farms, semi-tractors, farms, semi-trailers, farm trailers, farm trucks, recovery vehicles, recreational vehicles, school buses, semi-trailers, semi-tractors, semi-trailers, special machine trailers in excess or less than 9,000 pounds, trailers in excess of 9,000 pounds, and trucks in excess of 11,000 pounds, and then truck campers. We could set those numbers individually.
Buses are exempt.
Yeah, school buses and church buses were exempt. And the number of registrations that you see there in that column, that was what existed in August of 2022, August 2022.
Historical vehicles fall under passenger vehicles? Or how would those be classified?
Collector vehicles are a separate category. That's what you mean by historic.
Yes.
Have did a rough draft of an ordinance. It provides it to set the, last time I said you can't pick and choose. You can't pick and choose between the wheel tax and the excise tax or the surtax, but you can pick and choose between the classifications set forth in that ordinance. So some counties have like a $50 passenger motor vehicle fee for tax, but motorcycles are just $10. You can do that. You can eliminate, some have eliminated the military vehicles and collector vehicles from their tax. You can pick and choose within the category, but you have to have an excise tax and a motor vehicle tax. And presumably you have to have one that's taxed, one category at least that's taxed in the excise, or the excise tax, and at least one category in the motor vehicle.
Got a question kind of similar along those lines, Don. We have a lot of senior citizens on a real tight fixed income. While $25, $35, $40 may not sound like much to anybody in this chamber, to them, it's whether I'm going to be able to have a meal or not. You know, because they're seeing their utilities increase, property taxes just taking a hit. We're looking at a new jail, highway department, additional personal income tax, a whole litany of increased expenses. For senior citizens on a, can people say 65 or older, can they be exempt? Can there be a group of people exempt? Because this is a big deal to an awful lot of people.
The short answer is no. There's nothing in the statute that permits exempting a class of people.
We talked about, I think last time we talked about whether farmers could be capped at a certain dollar level, and that would be not really possible, but we can make the farm vehicles a much lower amount, or we can make them a zero, if we want to make the farm vehicle zero.
I believe so. Well, they don't classify by farm vehicles.
There's farm semi-tractor, farm semi-trailer, farm trailer, farm truck.
They do it by weight class. So I don't know what your farm vehicle is. I looked at the statute, I saw nothing that classifies farm vehicles separately.
They're on this table separately.
And that's what he got from, they may break it down.
He got that from the BMV, so.
Yeah, they may break it down at the BMV, but when you set the tax, you set the tax based upon the weight of the vehicle.
So we can't exempt these farm vehicles.
Correct.
And it was pointed out that, by a couple of people, that a farm semi-tractor, farm semi-trailer, you may have one farmer that uses that 12 months out of the year, and you may have another farmer who only uses that equipment during harvest time. So very limited amount of time,
But
so
nothing in the statute to,
let you differentiate
and
that.
I think part of that is administration by the BMV. It becomes almost impossible to administer a tax based upon mileage and so forth.
Mhm. And then if you go down through there, and this is why I asked the cities and towns to be here, you can see how how those funds collected might be distributed among the cities and towns. And it is based on population and road mileage. So let's just pick on Waterloo here. Waterloo has 13.77 road mileage, and they would get 2.27% of the allocation. And then if you go across there, it's if we set it at the minimum rate or the maximum without an asset management plan, which is really, I mean, that we shouldn't even have in there anymore because there's nobody without one, up to the maximum with the asset management plan. So they could be eligible anywhere for $8,500 up to $77,000. And in a small town, or that's going to go a long way in helping them with their road maintenance. And you can see Auburn, Garrett, they're all in here.
Rick, do we have to pick one column all the way through, or can we pick, for instance, the $25 column for all the passenger vehicles and then pick the minimum column for the county wheel tax vehicles?
I think that's completely up to us.
So we
And again, go turn to Don on that one, but
That's your decision.
Okay.
So let's, just for clarity's sake, we pick the max here at the basically 3.4 million, right? That's the max that we could bring in. And that would be added to our total annual pavement maintenance funds here. So it would be added to the 1.9 million plus the seed at 1.2 million, giving us the 3.1 plus the 3.4. So then annually we would have about 6.5 million. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay. And so that would always.
And that's assuming we're still getting the community crossings money and everything else, so. That would be the
Community
maximum.
crossing's on top.
That didn't include the community crossing.
Yeah, community crossing, I think, is on top of that. That's what,
The 8
according
point-
to what they presented, that's what kind of balances our budget now, as we count on that $1 million community crossing.
How much, is there any that the county is giving? Is it just from the lighted fund, the 1.2?
That was something our commissioners did here. And it was all because of the restricted, unrestricted issues. So,
And it's not a full 1.2 any longer, because part of that 1.2 was funding with the new highway department. So Ben doesn't have a full 1.2 from lighted to spend on highway operations for 2023. And I also want to remind you that with the funding that was approved for the highway department, the commissioners had agreed to receive less of their lighted funds so that the bond payments could be made from their economic development money and their lighted. So they're not going to be able to fund the highway out of their lighted funds indefinitely. No.
no, and that commitment by the commissioners is 10 years.
Question. Going through the ordinances and such, some of these counties have, that have had the wheel tax are still coming up short. And they've added a surtax on top of it to make up revenue shortfall, correct?
I do not know that. That may be the case, it's just that I'm not familiar.
They've
But-
increased,
Huh?
they've increased it.
They have,
They've increased, some counties have increased it. They started out at a certain amount, and then they've increased the dollar amount from different vehicles after several years.
That is a discussion I had with one county commissioner that chose to go to the maximum right off the bat, so they didn't have to come back and do it again. Others have set it lower or closer to the minimum, and then when they need more money, come back in and start raising it. So that's however you want to handle it.
it's never enough. There's always an escalation clause going to come from the state. I know, I've been there, and I fought this for a long time down there. It really upsets me, because the state is not going to do anything to raise taxes to make the state look back. And somebody mentioned it here. They're going to pass it on to local governments. We're going to give you all these options and these additional taxes that you can put on, but it's going to be up to you to do it. And it makes us the bad guys here on this. And that's where I'm coming from. The wheel tax, I don't have a problem per se with certain parts of it there. It's never enough. You get used to an expected level, and then suddenly it's more, it's more, it's more. Taxpayers can only take so much of a hit. That's the part that really, really concerns me, that we seem to kind of dance around.
And my answer to that, Dave, and I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with it up to a point, but, and we need to look at this as in August, we start looking at our budget. We need to decide at what level of service do our citizens expect? What do they want from county government? Or in this case, we are also speaking for residents of the city. And something that always bothers me is, well, that's Auburn, or that's Garrett, or that's Butler, or that's St. Joe. Well, those people are all DeKalb County citizens. And we should be thought of in the same light as every other person that lives outside of the city limits. You are working for everybody. So That, I mean, I understand what you're saying, I agree with it, but we need to decide, what do our citizens need to let us know? What level of service do you want? I mean, we can return all the roads to gravel, have less expense for Ben and for the county. That won't help the cities much, but, you know, we could help ourselves here. What level do you want in our staffing? How soon do you want to have a response from any of our county departments to your needs? Because that's how we need to make our judgment. We don't want to, I don't think we want to provide excessive amounts or excessive service, I don't know how to explain that one, more than our citizens want, but we certainly don't want to go below the level that our citizens want. We have got to at least come to that point where this is the service that they demand, and this is what we need to provide. So.
It seems to me in setting, because you've discussed, we're going to maybe set different numbers based upon whether they're over certain, a classification of vehicles, you may want to set different numbers. In order to calculate what revenue, or determine what revenue is needed, it seems to me that commissioners ought to present to you how much revenue they need or expect or feels appropriate, because it makes it very difficult to set the numbers in the various classifications if you don't know how much revenue they need. I mean, obviously you could just put the max on everything, but we've heard from the highway department, and we've given a lot of numbers, but I think the commissioners need to let you know how much revenue they need.
That's a point well taken. Ben, Mike, sometime between now and our next meeting, I think that would be a topic for our commissioners to give us that dollar amount, and then we can work back. You know, if we have the total we need, and we can work backwards from there.
You know, the B&B breaks it down separately.
Is there anyone in the audience that wants to make a comment about this?
An example, weights.
We are going to be, you know, each one of us is available at some point during the next month to, if you've got a comment you'd like to make, our emails are on the county's website. Yes.
Carol McConnell with the City of Auburn Engineering Department. Just a quick comment. Cities our size, the community crossings funding, we're in the 50-50 matching grants, so up to $1 million of matching. We tried to apply for several projects to maximize that $1 million matching. That's $2 million worth of street work. That's the best case scenario. The funding is available. We're going to go for it. It's not guaranteed. Last year, we applied for several different projects. We were awarded 1 out of 6, so we were left trying to figure out what we can do. So just to let you know, in this best case scenario, the additional $400,000, I think that's what that was, $431,000. We would definitely use that money one way or another. So to let you know, I think most communities, if it's available, will use it. We'll spend it, you know, for maintenance or however it's supposed to be spent. So the Community Crossings is a great program since 2016. I think, like Brad said, it's not guaranteed it's going to be there forever. You know, we rely on it right now. So.
Thank you. Brad, go ahead.
Two things I want to mention based on your discussion. First, as Councilman Ring and Councilman Yard were mentioning, the number is not necessarily a fixed number. You can go back and adjust it. And as a matter of fact, we recommend to all the clients we work with that you plan on increasing the numbers every year by some factor, whether it's the CPIU, the Consumer Price Index for urban areas, or whether it's a number you choose and feel based on, your experience is the adequate number, usually somewhere between 3 to 6%. And the reason for that is because we all know that the cost of a gallon of gas or a person's wages for an hour is not the same now as it was 10 years ago. It goes up consistently. So you've got to make sure to maintain the same purchasing power when it comes to being able to do these road projects. You slowly bring this thing up with inflation or with some other type of factor which makes sense. You can't always keep pace. When the cost of petroleum was stupid crazy several years ago, we were seeing paving projects going up 15 to 20% in the course of a year. No one can budget for that, but at least you can kind of blunt the edge by budgeting for something. You could even use what the state uses as your factor for increasing your budget potentially, because that's usually somewhere between 3 to 6, 3 to 7%. The other thing that I was going to discuss, Todd just escaped me at this point. Sorry, I was thinking so much about the other one. Oh, yes, thank you. Commissioners, you're asking them potentially in a month to come back and give you a number. In their defense, and I know they didn't ask me to defend them, but we do asset management plans for quite a few communities, cities, towns, counties. Asset management plans typically involve quite a bit of work to come up with the right numbers to determine what projects need to be done, what funds are available. It's a multi-month process. So just realize the number they give you is going to be an estimate and is not going to necessarily be dead on where you're going to need it to be. They may be way low or way high. You're kind of asking them to pull something out of their back pocket, throw it on the table, and have it be right. So they can give you guidance, but don't beat them up too bad if they miss the mark, because this is a fairly tough, fairly lengthy process, especially when we look at asset management plans that it includes everything, bridges, small structures, roads, the whole 9 yards. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. You want to speak? Go right ahead.
Lynn Reinhardt, 4224 County Road 71. And I thought I had one question when I came in, and I thought it was answered during the first presentation that all of the county highway funding came from the gas taxes. But when I heard Amy talk about some different funds, it sounds like there's money that comes from income taxes as well.
No.
No?
Question about seed of monies.
Light it or something
Yeah,
that
light it.
way. And I guess us as common folks don't understand all your acronyms and what that is.
To help with the restricted, unrestricted state money coming in, the commissioners have committed a certain portion of their seeded, lighted money to the highway department. That money is being reduced because of what they've agreed to pay for the bonds for the highway department, the new building. So that money is tax funds coming in.
Okay.
Other than the gas tax. And then the community crossings money coming in from the state is state funds coming in. But the majority of the funding for the highway department comes from the gas tax.
Okay. I think it's important that that be clarified that way, because I was seeing different answers, and that was a question that I had before I came in that way. So what we're initially hearing maybe isn't the whole story to start with, I guess.
The other thing to help clarify, and I'm just going to tell you, it may or may not. Seeded, C-E-D-I-T, and lighted, L-I-T-E-D, are referencing the same amount of money, or the same pot of money. The seeded, it used to be called County Economic Development Income Tax. The state changed that wording, and it is now called Local Income Tax Economic Development. But it is the portion of the income tax that is but that goes to the commissioners for the commissioners to be able to use how they deem fit with economic development and other needs in the county. So those are one and the same, the name just changed.
Okay. And then I guess another thing that I heard is that to fund the $9 million, I believe it is, highway maintenance facility just outside of Waterloo, that funds that were coming to the highway department through these seated or lighted funds are going to be taken away. So I guess that was one thing that some of you might remember I brought up at the time that way is I sure hated to see the possibility of spending $9 million on a highway facility and then coming back the same year and asking for a wheel tax. And it seems like that's where we're at. So that's all I had to ask and address today. Thank you.
Anybody else? Larry, go ahead.
I appreciate those comments. Actually, I think that was kind of one of the concerns I had as well, that we've kind of taken it from one pocket and moved to another in a way. In principle, the idea of a tax, I don't want to say it's point of use, but it is a tax targeted at the roads. Makes more sense to me than, how we've done it. Well, the gas taxes, obviously the gas tax, we talk about the potential for electric vehicles. Well, here you have a situation that'll reduce the gas tax potentially. You also have electric vehicles having batteries, they weigh more than conventional vehicles. Who knows if this will take off. There seems to be a lot of public money flowing into that industry. So that'll become potentially more of an issue all along. But your points on the seated, the lighted, seated reallocation of money from highway to, well, I don't know how you want to characterize that, Rick, but some of that money is going to be unavailable now because it's going to pay for financing costs for the highway garage. So, it's a complicated issue. To Dave's point, the senior citizens are definitely affected by those who drive. Are definitely affected. I guess they could all take DART, right? In theory, I mean, I'm not being facetious and purposely, but it's an issue for people. Is there any way in the budgeting process to find savings that could offset any increase in the money flowing into the highway department? I'm an advocate of money actually being allocated to the highway department, but are we also spending our money, as Rick, you were talking about the level of services for other services, are we at an optimal level? Can we actually lower something somewhere else in order to cover additional costs to the taxpayer?
Well, again, though, Larry, I want to point out that we're talking fund accounting.
I understand.
We may have lots of money in another fund, but it can't be spent on the highways.
I understand.
Or it can't be spent on the airport.
But can it be reduced? I think Amy asked a couple meetings ago, do you actually ever cut costs or do you ever cut taxes? I can't remember what your question was, but is there a way to offset potential wheel tax somewhere else in terms of lower revenue?
Well, we have not seen the commissioner's lighted budget for 2024. I think they have other things budgeted in that lighted budget.
Correct.
That aren't highway. Those things may be switched over to paying for something else. That is going to be a commissioner's decision as to what they present to the council.
Okay.
And generally, well, it's more in the cities than it is in the county, but generally, we don't usually add to budgets. I mean, we do usually take away. In cities, the only thing the city councils can do is cut from the mayor's budget, and they can't move that money from here to there. They're not allowed to do that. Only the mayor can do that. So we'll see what budgets they present.
Yeah.
One more question, and can the cities actually do a wheel tax of their own on top of what is being proposed in the county?
No, only the county council can set the wheel tax. There is a separate statute.
Right.
Various entities that raises that possibility. But as of right now,
That's
only
not,
the DeKalb County Council can set it.
I think there are only 5 counties that you're in the situation that you're talking about. And it's a system that I think they're looking at doing away with, to where it returns to the county council for all 92 counties.
yeah, okay, thanks.
Anything else? All right. At our next meeting, we will have the sample ordinance, which Don has already provided us.
That's just a rough draft.
Right, well, and it's a rough draft. I mean, it could be changed between now and then. It's my understanding that a public hearing is not necessary. However, we will take public comment. So that will happen. And I would ask that if the cities and towns are in favor of this, or not in favor of it, let the county council know what your position is. Because that will have an effect on each one of us and how we vote for it. Again, we've presented this a couple of times over the last 10 years or more that it's been available. DeKalb County's always not, never passed it. It's always failed. I don't know what's going to happen with the next time. But we will address it. It has to be, if we fail to pass it in August, it cannot be brought up again until next year. Because we have to notify the state by September 1 for it to take effect in January of '24. So if it were to fail, we would maybe address it again next year, but it would always be for that following year, that calendar year. So with that, I guess, yeah, Amy, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify in my mind, on this handout here in the red, where they were talking, it's the DCHD annual maintenance. That's community crossing money, or is that?
Brad?
No, that's just the gas, a portion of the gas tax money.
That's our NVH funding.
Okay. That will stay consistent. I mean, it's not going theory. I mean, it's.
No, it's not going away. The thing that's hard with our budget is it's gas tax. So like in '21, of course, that was the COVID era. That's unforeseen. Hopefully we don't see that again, but we had a significant deficit that year in our revenue. So our revenues, when they come in, our receipts we get from the auditor vary each month. You know, through the summer months, they go up a little bit more because people are traveling, as people's not traveling, as the economy changes, their interest rates goes up, gas goes up, that affects our revenues. So it's our revenues is kind of a roller coaster. So in this last 3 to 4 years, it's been an extreme roller coaster due to inflation, cost, COVID. So.
And unlike other money coming from the state, the tax money, the gas money comes in every month.
Right.
Everything else comes in twice a year.
Right. But since the restricted fund come in, that made us have to allocate more to the pavement, and that's why the commissioners helped with our deficit of the unrestricted. Because the states even went down and so critical as if I go out and throw cold mix in a hole, that's maintenance. That comes out of the unrestricted. So if we go out and mill out a section of a road, put it back, that's their preventative or their definition of how it should be repaired to pull it out of restricted. So you're kind of splitting hairs there, really. No. It comes out of the NVH fund, but not out of that 1.9. That is strictly materials or contractual that we hire. Or contractual if we hire for paint striping or paving or crack fill, something like that. MVH, yes. Now, is what we can do is we go through this every year with Susan at the end of the year. We track all of our man hours, and I can even include gravel road maintenance, grading, when we chip seal, pave. I track them man hours, and at the end of the year, we'll write a claim to the auditor to be paid to the restricted fund, and we'll reimburse the unrestricted from that same account. So I can actually draw that out of restricted funds, but to split it through the whole summer is a lot of bookkeeping and records. We do it one time a year at the end of the year.
It's an accounting nightmare, the way the system
Yes,
is
it
set
is.
up.
That keeps my office gals busy. Yes, yeah, that 50% rule is put in an act for some locals, whoever, I don't know who, that was doing some things the legislatures didn't like. Instead of addressing a few, they put it on all of us.
All right, anything else?
Do we
Amy?
know the counties that do have the wheel tax? Does this have the potential to affect any of the CCMG money coming back for our communities? I mean, would it put us on the line?
I do not believe so.
Okay. I mean, I hate to put any of that money in jeopardy
Right.
for our communities.
I think the opposite might be, I don't know, I don't think it would affect it. Anybody else on the wheel tax? Again, our emails are on the website, county website. Send us an email. My phone number is actually out there. If you want to call me, call me. I might not answer from the 20th until the 2nd, but other than that, I will. I'm
You can
assuming.
also send them to me, and I can get them.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. And Brad, Ben, do you mind can we put this on the website so those people that have been here or people that are listening to this later might want to see this document? Is that okay? Okay, okay. So let's put this on the website so that people can access it. This is the stuff that they've given us. Now, is there? Yeah,
The maps and
let's put
everything?
it all out there, and I
I'll
think,
just scan it as one document, and
Okay.
so there's not 50,000 things to open.
all right, well, that way it's out, it needs to be out there so that everybody can see it,
Yep.
so.
You want to just send me a whole thing? A whole PDF file of everything? Got it. Thank you.
All right, all right, with that being said, we're going to move on to the next item of business, but I thank you all for coming, and I know a number of you, it was real short notice. Thank you for coming, I do appreciate it, so. Last thing on our agenda is our council discussion. We have a couple of things. First of all, we made the change to the last budget vote last month. We were moving the day because of the county council, the county association's annual meeting. We moved the date. Well, we didn't think about the fact that we needed 10 days from the public hearing. The public hearing is actually the 13th. It has to be the second day, not the first day of our early September meeting. So quite honestly, the only thing we can do is move it right back to where it was to begin with, because we don't have the 10 days that are necessary. Now, I'm not gonna be here. I can zoom in for that meeting. Dave, you'll be in charge that day. And I think the only thing that,
He looks happy. So we're just keeping it as was for September 26th.
yeah, we moved it back to the 21st, and now we're gonna move it back to the 26th. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we do not meet in early October. In order to meet the state's deadline, we meet on that 26th.
I may have a couple stickers. I don't have any, I'll go
You
buy a
know,
couple.
make Van Wise day, and let's make him chair of the meeting. The other thing, and you all got a paper copy of the health tax, the proposal there. That came from the state health department as to what's available. And as we said earlier on with the commissioner discussion, we really do need to have an idea of what they're going to want to do. So when we do our budgets in mid-August, because it is going to have an effect. And I think a couple of things that I would like to say about it, just to make sure that everybody is clear. A number of years ago, the state did an issue with emergency preparedness. And DeKalb County, and this was before I got on the board, chose not to take that grant because they believed that it required them to hire a person to do that emergency preparedness, and that then they would be stuck with that person forever. And that is not the case. That any time that we would need to hire somebody for a specific project, those people can be hired on a temporary contract, do the project, and then when the project is done, that person is no longer needed and would be gone. It would not be a permanent employee. There are a number of other cases, and Cheryl and I had this discussion just the other day. One of the things that they're looking at is infant mortality and infant fatalities. Well, DeKalb County doesn't have a large enough number in that category to require doing something internally within the department just for that. That is a very good case where you could contract with, in this case, maybe Allen County, who would have a much larger number, and Allen County could contract with DeKalb, Steuben, LaGrange, and all of the surrounding counties to handle that, and that we would just pay a stipend or an amount for, based on how many we actually had, or maybe a fixed amount. But that would be between the commissioners and the health department and the Board of Health as to what could be farmed out, I guess is the right term. There are some of these projects that St. Martin's is already covering. And we can take part of this money and do a contract with St. Martin's Health Clinic and have them provide that function. It's not something that you have to hire a body within the health department. And some of this money that's being brought in could actually help us pay for those nurses' salaries that we just had to increase. So there are a lot of considerations here, and that's why we really need to have that information from the commissioners before we get to the budget time. Yes, yes. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not being done in DeKalb County. When they set this program up, it was all 92 counties that they were looking at. And that's why, again, it's imperative that the health department, the Board of Health, and the commissioners take a look at what items are not being done in DeKalb County. Where should this money be focused at, too? There may be, again, infant mortality is one. There's not a high enough volume in here to really do something separately. Contract with someone else. Contract with a partner. The discussion came up Monday with the commissioners about drug-free DeKalb. Drug-free DeKalb is already doing some of the anti-smoking issues. Parkview's doing some of the anti-smoking or stop smoking things. Maybe it would behoove us to give a grant to these places that are already doing it. Maybe even to the Northeast Center, it may be doing some of these things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to hire people. And I think that's always a very big concern. Are we hiring more people? Are we bringing more people in? Especially if we think that we're going to be having those people or that job forever. So, anyway. What's that?
Can we use some of the money on roads and stuff?
Unfortunately, no, it's fund
I
accounting,
know.
I'm sorry. But that's, and that's, you know, outside of this group, that's very hard for people on the outside to understand because
Yes.
the rest of the world functions on accrual-based accounting. And, you know, your money's your money. It's not which pocket's that money in, so.
I think it's frustrating for people to see that the state is taking money from the counties as planned, right? To reduce the funding in roads and then, but has money then to add these additional services. People struggle with that going.
Well, and that money is essentially coming in from
With strings attached.
from their
Yes,
other
that's a good point.
revenue streams. It's not coming from gas tax. And that's the thing we got to be careful of because they're looking at everything in total as far as taxation in Indiana. And, you know, it's already been well documented that they want to do with the state income tax. That doesn't have anything to do with our income tax, our 2.5% allowable. But they want to do away with that state income tax to mirror what they're doing in Florida and what they're doing in Texas. But, you know, that money has to be made up somewhere else. So where are they going to put a user fee or where are they going to put, are they going to tap it somewhere else? It's like the issue we've dealt with over the last few years. They keep wanting to do away with personal property tax. That makes up 33% of our budget. We cannot do away with 33% of our budget income if we don't pick it up somewhere else. So tell us where that's going to be.
I mean, it looked like just some emails that the state is giving the counties more latitude to create new taxes. I think I saw one for maybe the
Well, no, actually they did. This past legislature, they did. They created a tax that now every county that has any portion of EMS can do a 3% up to 0.3 income tax. In order to fund your judicial system, you can do up to a 0.2, and it can only cover up to half. Well, if you look at our budget, and I did the calculation for last meeting, and I believe it was in the neighborhood of 52, 53, 54% of our county budget has to do with the legal system. Prosecutor, the probation department, the sheriff, the clerk's office, the public defender. You add all of those things, and that is the majority of the county budget. And they're all things that we're required to do. Everything else can be almost a wish list. I mean, you don't have to have a paved road, you can have a gravel road. You don't even have to have a road if you don't want it. You know, those things you can change, but the legal system, the justice system, we can't do much about that. So those are the two that they gave us, but we're limited to that 2.5%. You know, we already have property tax relief in there. We have the public safety income tax. We have the corrections income tax. That was all given to us a couple months ago, and we'll keep that updated, and you'll see that at budget time. But we're less than 2.5%. We've not gone to the maximum. And I don't see that there's any desire to increase that, unless they take something away from us, and we would have to match it somewhere. So, all right. Anything else?
The only question I have is, currently we have Highway and Health Department for budget presentations. is there any other department that you want us to schedule?
The instructions that we gave, since we're going away from the 2 days of recitation of inflation, we gave anybody that had a major change that was necessary is who we wanted to hear from. Other than that, we would spend the time actually going through the numbers. Something else that has been brought up, pay raises. This is what the state did to us. This is the reverse. Rather than go with the typical growth quotient calculation, which would match the growth quotient to actual inflation, the state has limited us to something less than 4%. So if inflation went up, say, 6% for this year, we would have that to deal with, but we would only be getting a maximum of less than 4% additional income. So it's my thought, and this is something that we will have to vote on during budget time, is that whatever our in total increases would be for pay, it cannot go over 4%. We're not going to get any more money. We have to stick with that. And we do know that we've already got the health department, we've had to have some major increases there, and we've got now the same thing with the non-nurse staff in the health department. We've had the need from the highway department because of CDL licenses and what we might have to pay or what process we might have to go to get people with a CDL license. So there are going to be changes. And it may not affect everybody across the board with the same percentage. So those are things we have to keep thinking about.
That was going to be a question. Have to everybody's rate.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's one of the things that has gotten counties in trouble across the board. And that's one of the reasons we went with the wage study, the job description study, and everything else. Get them to the appropriate level that we can justify. That's objective. And there are going to be, nurses went up more than 3.5%. Maybe secretarial or clerical positions only went up 2%. And that we can make those adjustments. And we had to make an adjustment last year because of the health insurance. That's when, we started talking about longevity pay because of the big increase in health insurance. Well, this year, they did not get that increase. The commissioners have kept that fairly steady. And I think that from what I'm hearing, and it's only anecdotal information, is this new program, medications have maybe been reduced in their cost, that the people are paying less out of pocket. And the people that are on the single plan, their monthly input is now stayed the same as this year? Single plan?
If you were on the single, no. If you were on the PPO plan,
Okay.
then the rates were decreased 50%. So, but if you were on the HSA plan, you moved to the 50% amount of the PPO plan.
So they are going to see some benefit to the health insurance changes that they made. And hopefully we can keep that up, but we have to be very careful about that because this got the county into trouble before because they did not manage the self-funded program adequately. And they are. And there actually was one thing that we did not do, and I had to ask some questions about this, because, when we dropped the vision and the dental plan and made that voluntary, so that the employee could buy into those two things. We did not at the same time create a cafeteria plan. And there was a reason for that, is moving from the HSA to the cafeteria plan, there was a lot of federal guidelines that had to be met to match the two up. And so it's better to wait until maybe a year goes by and then next year start the cafeteria plan. And the cafeteria plan, they could actually put money into the plan on a yearly basis, but it had to be spent by the end of the year. If not, it was retained within the system. They lost that money. But it let them put money aside pre-tax that they could pay for the dental, they could pay for the vision, and probably come out ahead by putting their own money in. But that, there's gonna be a year gap in doing that. So.
Numbers, I know those numbers, that data would be helpful. What kind of effect? That they had or are not getting now.
On what we're paying out of our pocket, out of our paychecks?
Have we, talking about, okay, we're gonna have the health department come in and talk about their situation, we're gonna have the highway come in and talk about their situation. Do we have anybody else that's turned in something really kind of off the wall, or a big increase, or?
Not that I have reviewed yet. I mean, as I go through them more and more, if I see something that I think you guys will have questions on, if you're okay with it, then I'll have Jody get a hold of them and see if they can come in. But if it's not anything out of the ordinary that you would.
Department heads or elected officials, maybe that haven't been through budget yet to understand what.
Well, the one thing I will encourage, and again, I encourage it because of the additionals and the transfers, the department heads need to be reaching out to you and reviewing their individual budgets with you. I've already done that with the sheriff and community corrections, or central communications. I still need to do Homeland Security, and I need to do the commissioners, but they need to be reaching out to you so that you're kind of well-versed, and you're going to be the first person we ask during those sessions. And if, you don't have the answer, we're going to call them, but you're going to be the first ones. And hopefully you'll be able to see anything that, is, hey, this is out of line, or this is excessive, or whatever. And you can maybe correct that to start with.
Speaking of which, I got a response from Michelle regarding that 7,500. I tried to email it to everybody, but I'm not able to get emails right now.
Yeah, well, none of us are. I don't think so.
Do you want me to read her response?
Yes, if you would.
Okay, so Community Corrections was informed by IT that with Logan moving to a new position, we will no longer be required to supplement his pay. Community Corrections has seen a need for additional cognitive behavioral programming for our participants, along with probation and problem-solving court participants in certain criminogenic areas. We're looking to begin juvenile MRT with Change Academy students and possibly evening session for juvenile probation clients, untangling relationships for adult clients, focused on codependency and health versus unhealthy relationships. There's also been discussion that a Seeking Safety group, which is a participant-led group focusing on trauma and substance abuse, may also fill a gap in local services. So this will be 5 to 6 hours a week of additional programming for criminal justice participants indicated in that area of need. So they wanted to transfer that savings for them from Logan's pay, and it has been approved by the commissioners and the county attorney to engage with an instructor on an invoiced per class basis for those groups. When email is up, I will also forward it.
Okay.
Help.
All right, anybody else got anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. That motion's carried. Thank you all very much, and look forward to getting a lot of emails, I think. And I don't know if I have, do we have any way of finding out how often we turn this down? We voted no on a wheel tax. Is there any simple way to look for that? I don't want
No.
anybody